Scripture. Amen. Amen. Do you know, whenever there's a serious subject, you know, a grave point, whether you're at a funeral or a wedding where you've got to keep quiet, if you're anything like me, that's when you start sniggering and thinking of obscure and ridiculous things to say. And just then, I was trying to work out how I could embrace the fact that Leather Pride is going on in this weekend. And we have a whole bunch of visitors in the valley who are here for Leather Pride, and I thought, well, perhaps if I tell the congregation that secretly most people have come to me and told me that they're wearing something leather under their clothes. For example, Mickey has a leather bustier on. Has a leather whalebone corset underneath his coat. So I was sat there trying to be deathly serious and sniggering away like a naughty schoolboy. There you go. All right, but it is joyful and wonderful to say welcome to the people all over the valley who are here for Leather Pride. I can't think of any who might be here for Leather Pride. I'm not going to start pointing fingers or anything, but enjoy yourself. Have a wonderful time. Celebrate God in all you do. And our prayers and hopes will be with you, and in fact some of us will be with you. So, Armistice Day, Veterans Day, Remembrance Day, it's all the same day. As I mentioned earlier on, it is generally the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, which is the point of commemoration. In England, in Australia, in Scotland, in Ireland, in Canada, in New Zealand, in South Africa, across the English-speaking world, there will be, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, a minute of silence. And that is religiously kept. In England, in supermarkets, everything goes still. If there is a sports game going on, it will end and there will be a moment of silence. Even in cinemas and theatres, if there is anything indeed showing at that time in the morning, it falls silent, and there is that moment of commemoration. It's something which, to me, is profound, because it's not just about war. You know, we can become so cynical that we ascribe the motives of the great powers onto the ordinary soldier who made up the army or the navy or the air force, and that's unfair, that's unkind. God sees the motivations of our hearts, and I'm reminded when I was going back and doing some research over this, looking back into the First World War, this notion of Armistice Day, what it was all about. Well, certainly from a UK perspective, it wasn't about a claw for power. It was about the defence of Belgium. It was about a small, powerless, neutral country who had been guaranteed by treaty of those stronger than Belgium. Belgium was invaded, therefore we went to war. The Second World War was about exactly the same principle. Poland was a country that had long been vulnerable and attacked from either side, west and east. And Poland had a treaty with the UK, and when Poland was invaded, we went to war. But what really happened was not that some man in London stood up and made a declaration of war. What really happened was that some man, some woman who was cooking the dinner or who was working in a blacksmith or in a factory, who had wives and husbands and sisters and children, who had hopes and dreams and aspirations, who wanted to move into a new house the next year or wanted to go to Blackpool on vacation, that they gave everything up. Absolutely everything. And they didn't give it up to go somewhere nice. They gave it up to suffer 4 long years in the trenches. A living hell in the trenches. And what they took away from them was often broken bodies and broken minds. A whole cohort wiped out or shattered. People broken with the horror of what they'd seen. I remember reading a memoir about a guy who had been a school teacher, and he went off to fight. He was in the trenches in the First World War at the Battle of the Marne, and in the Battle of the Somme, where a couple of 100,000 men died in the first barrages of the battle. On the first day, we lost 200,000 people. Unbelievable losses. Unbelievable carnage. And a friend of his was killed on the first day by the first barrage, and was just over there in no man's land, sticking up. And he was there for the next 6 months. And they said hello to him every morning and goodbye when they went to their beds. And nobody could reach him. They just watched their comrade, their friend, slowly rotting away. Now I mention this because it's too frequently an abstract concept to us, is war. It's too frequently also something that happens over there by people other than us. People get themselves into a froth of patriotic fervour and send other people away to die. People too frequently who have absolutely no contact and absolutely no link with the horrors that are going on elsewhere and the threats that ordinary men and women, countrymen from countries who are close to us, whoever they may be, are going through. And yet people still do it. Yet people still do drop everything, leave everything, and go to places which are, in any words we're going to look for, living hells. Jesus called people to drop absolutely everything they had in pursuit of an absolute. That absolute is called by many things. In Jesus' case, it was God in Jesus. That was clearly what Jesus was calling. That I have something here. I have a way of living. I have a way of speaking. I have an understanding which is closer to God. It is of the things of God. We have other words which are absolutes to us as well. Bravery, self-sacrifice. These are noble and honourable causes. And the majority of those who walk away from their house and their home and their expectations and their joys and the things that they're looking forward to, the ordinary people, are motivated by absolutes like that. They're not motivated by geopolitical concerns. They are not motivated by what somebody in Washington or somebody in Paris or somebody in London has said. They believe that they are acting in defense of those absolutes. And therefore it is a cruel and a wicked thing that has been done to many of these millions of men and women, that the aspirations and the manipulations of the leaders should be cast down upon the ordinary men and women who go out to fight. And so many of those leaders whose machinations and aspirations come from places of greed, or from ignorance, or from cruelty, hide behind the nobility of the ordinary soldier. Hide behind the nobility of the ordinary men and women who go out to actually do the job. And they hide behind it and they say, you cannot criticize us, you have to support the troops. You cannot criticize our motives. And they hide behind those noble men and women who fight. Unless we find a way of doing both of these things, of holding to account those who would use the lives of others under a flag of patriotism, whilst also supporting those who go out in their hundreds of thousands with truth and with nobility and bravery and compassion on their brains, then we cannot move the national or the international process forward. So let us leave aside those geopolitical concerns. And today, let us honour every single man and woman, and by international definitions, child, because you know, according to international law, both the USA and the UK use child soldiers, because we both enlist under 18 with the permission of parents. So those men and women and children, let us remember today. And let it not just be a day of commemoration. Let us make a commitment within ourselves. A commitment which we will keep to. It may be a small one, but from small regular commitments grow habits of life. When we've had scenarios before now where people will choose a prayer partner and they will pray for somebody at the same time every day, what I would suggest is that every day, I don't know what your prayer program may be. I mean, some of you might not have a formal prayer program. Some of you might be as nutty as myself and Jim and have the whole damn 7 hours of the day into the office of the hours. But just to take a moment, however long it is, not to find complicated words to commemorate the living and the dead, but to open your heart and your intention to God. This can happen in a moment of silence. You don't have to say anything. Just to lift up those who are struggling today. Those with broken bodies who will live maybe 40 years, but will live with the consequences of what might have been 5 minutes on a battlefield in Iraq or Afghanistan. To lift up those who are struggling with what they've seen, with what they've done, with what has been done to them. The relationships which are broken by the disconnect, where one member goes away and becomes greatly other than what they were, and comes home to a partner who can never understand what has gone on in those months in the desert or in the mountains thousands of miles away. The burden of trying to get a job when you come back from somewhere where you've been told that you're defending the country's honour, and you come back and find you're almost unemployable. You have healthcare problems which will chase you to your grave. And you have to fight and fight and fight to be looked after as you should be. So just in a moment during the day, today and tomorrow, and if you want to make that commitment every day, lift up those who live with the reality of it. Not with the slogans and the bumper stickers. Not with the politicizing, just real people. Not obsessed with the rights and the wrongs of the issue, but accepting that they are our brothers and sisters no matter what, who may well be completely at variance with us in a whole range of different opinions, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't have to like somebody and you don't have to know someone in order to pray for them. But in doing so, you get to know them and often you get to like them. So I would say as we come to this commemoration and this remembrance, to this honouring, to this salute to those living and those dead, that each and every one of us can really do something, so that it's not just a cycle that comes round every year. So it's not just a day which we pass through and feel subconsciously we've done our duty. We can put them to bed again now. You know, they can go back on the back burner. Because they never do go back on the back burner. In this church, they're our brothers and sisters. They're those we love, those who contribute to the church, those who we see every week, those who are in leadership in the church. Veterans are everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And by the way we treat them in our heart, in the depths of our heart, it will affect the way we treat them as living, breathing human beings. Mm-hmm. Amen. So let us remember we can put away the things of the grave. And when we have a living relationship with somebody, then all those things of the grave are the politicking and the machinations that went on that send people sometime into harm's way where they shouldn't be in harm's way. Let us put all that to one side. That happens. We will work against it when we can. We will pray for it when we can. But fundamentally our duty is to a living, breathing human being. And it is that living, breathing human being, in their millions, that we dedicate this service today. Amen. Amen.